Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Annette Jones. Welcome to the show, Annette. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I'm so excited that you're on the show. Annette and I are actually neighbors, and we have just known each other now a short number of years. With the pandemic, we kind of would see each other in the courtyard, walking our dogs and, hi, waving and talking from a distance, but we've had a chance to get to know each other a little bit. And so I'm excited to have you share with us your experience and your education and your knowledge and all of that related to being an educator, a teacher yourself, and now continuing your education and getting your master's degree.
Yeah, it's exciting. And thank you again for having me on the show. It's amazing what you've been doing here and all these ladies coming on. It's really great to see that. So yeah, I'm definitely in education. I've been, I realized the other day when I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, this is my 19th year as a high school English teacher. So yeah, it flies by before you realize.
19 years. And that you've been teaching just the subject of English the entire time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so since we've kind of jumped right into it, why don't you tell us did you always know you wanted to be a teacher? Was it something that led you to become a teacher?
Yeah, actually, I am, I think, a rare breed where in high school, actually, my junior year, I had a amazing teacher, and her name was Miss Davis. It was great that she would expose us to literature and make it very clear that these were college level books, and what we were reading, they were reading at that level. And I think inspiring us and kind of planting those seeds that we could handle material like that. I really enjoyed being able to discuss literature and look at it through these different lenses. And I think early on that I didn't want to be in a career that confined me to an office. I liked engaging with people, and I really always wanted to help give back to community, especially where I grew up. That was really key for me. So it felt like a really natural blend. Like if I could talk and read about, what I was consuming and help community, I was signed up for sure.
That's excellent. And so may I ask, what grade do you teach right now?
So I'm in high school. I'm in the K through 12 system, specifically high school. I have a range. I usually have freshmen, sophomores, and seniors. Yeah. And I have several senior honors courses. I do a special program called Puente at our high school site, which is really geared and designed towards helping first generation students, specifically students of color who do not often see themselves represented in higher levels of education. So really trying to expose them through the work that we do, the rigorous writing and the reading, but also, taking them on college tours so that they see the colleges, they see themselves there, and they can start to envision, what that journey would be like.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what I think that when, as a student, your teacher is interacting with you in such a way that sort of the expectation is that you'll be expected to read at a higher level and, discuss these topics at a certain level. It's like that expectation. I think the kids rise to that expectation is really what I'm trying to say. And I just think that makes a difference, right? The kids feel like they're a little bit more respected, right? Mm-hmm. Would you find that to be true?
I agree. I think that's key, is setting those expectations and, having a very loving accountability, that there are expectations and I will guide you and I want to work with you and help you, but that you need to come along on this journey, right? Like it has to be a co-creation of knowledge together, and recognizing students have so much knowledge coming in. I think that often times is forgotten or it's left at the wayside, where it's like, these are not empty vessels. Students are coming with a lot of lived experience knowledge, even at a high school or elementary level. They know things. We just have to try to tap into that and then connect it in different ways, or allow them to make those connections.
Yeah, that's a valid point. They have those, as you said, lived experiences. They have knowledge. And, what we think about kids is that we assume that they just don't know anything, right? They need to be filled up with this knowledge, but we forget that they do have knowledge already. And we need to sort of bring that into what it is that we're also trying to teach them. Yeah, that's fantastic. And you recognize that, you're working with them in that way is awesome. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about the experience that you've had as an educator, teaching 19 years. That's a lot of years of education and experience in teaching. So tell us a little bit about it.
It's been amazing. I think, now as I'm hitting my 19th year, and this is actually part of what I think relates to me going back into school, is feeling like I was hitting a wall. I think I felt like I was tapping into different things, but I had to remind myself what it was like to be a student again. And I knew there was more out there. And I needed something to kind of, I think, move me in a different direction. And so I love what I do. I love teaching. It was just a way for me to access, I think, different material. And then finding my goal is to take what I'm doing at a master's level. How can I bring that into what I currently do in the classroom? So how can I break those pieces down, make it accessible so that, again, kind of trying to inspire the kids, like, look, if I'm doing this at a graduate level, can I get you to read some of this? Can I get you to understand who these scholars and thinkers are now? And so that if you decide and if you go to college, you've already seen these names, you've heard these things.
That's great. And so specifically, what is it that your master's degree will be in?
So I went back to school. I am a Chicano studies major at San Jose State University. That program is really special, really unique. I chose it because for me, giving back to the community is not only giving to others, but I think I needed to tap back into my own culture and my own, upbringing. That was something I was passionate about. And so I knew for me, especially as a full-time teacher, my family, my husband, I'm a dog mom. So I have a lot of things that are going on in my life. And if I was going to devote the time to go back to school, it had to be something I was passionate about. And so multicultural literature was one avenue, but I minored actually in my undergraduate years in the Mexican American Studies program. So I had already experienced some of that. Being the Puente teacher at my site, and I'm also the coordinator, this felt like a really natural fit. So I could further my knowledge in that area, bring it back to what I do. And it felt like a win-win.
That's excellent. And tell us a little bit about the college tours that you mentioned earlier that you're taking the kids on and exposing them to those environments. And I think probably, opening their eyes.
Yeah, I'm really lucky, I think, with being a part of the Puente program. The statewide office, which runs out of UC Berkeley, helps fund us a little bit. And so, funding is hard to come by in education. So it's not a ton, but it helps a little. And so, trying to take students to, for example, like UC Berkeley and UC Davis, right? We recently went on a leadership conference through the Puente program at CSU Sacramento, which was amazing. They had the keynote speaker was the grandson of Cesar Chavez. And so, the kids get exposed to things like that. They had multiple workshops. Some of them were, how do you fund your college education? Some of them were, a day in the life of a college student. So those opportunities are really important. When we go on college tours, we also try to not just physically going there, but hearing students speak about their experience, trying to learn from admissions officers directly. What are some things that okay, I can put on my application. What are some tips that you have in applying? So that all those things are really important, and I'm hoping help the students early as they make kind of those plans and decisions, hopefully to go into higher education.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it seems like such a complicated process, the college admissions and all of that. And so I think that it can be off-putting, right from the start, just even for anybody, trying to figure out how these things work. And so to have these, college admissions, people who are there assisting and kind of explaining the process, I think helps clear it up enough that, hopefully you get some students who are applying, because now it's not such a scary thing, or it doesn't seem so like, oh my gosh, so far out there, I just can't even imagine it. And so do you find that to be true?
Yeah, I think, and especially I think like you mentioned, the college process is so challenging and it has become so competitive. Imagine compounding, I think, that stress and that difficulty with being a first generation student. And so in your family, you are the first to engage with this entire process. And so there's nobody at home necessarily to turn to as a guide or as a mentor. And that's really adding, I think, a lot to these students. So when we go to college tours, that becomes really helpful. And also, when we get back to school, making myself available or having them learn, how do you access the counselor at our high school site? Who do you reach out to? Who's within our school community, your resources, and learning how do you email those people? How do you advocate for yourself? So it's all part of, I think, those larger life skills, right?
Yeah, definitely. The advocating for yourself, 100%. That is a learning process, right? Trying to find those resources, not just for school and college and, whatever, but just in general. I mean, how do you advocate for yourself if you have to go to the doctor or, whatever the case may be, if you don't have those skills? How challenging is that for you? It's kind of sad, but I think that it's great that the counselors on site, it's really like, can they connect with the students enough to get that engagement so that the students do learn and do figure out how these things, work, right?
Yeah. And even I think too, it's ideally, right? I mean, they're connecting with individuals, staff, support people for them that's amazing. And we always hope that, but also too, I think recognizing, you may not get along with this person and have this connection. However, what do you still need to do to be respectful, to make something successful and to work? And that's all part of that learning process. And, I've had to, I think, remind myself, which again, I cannot say enough how I think going back to school for me has, I think, been beneficial in putting myself in that situation again as a student, having to go through that again too, having to apply to grad school. And so when my students this year, my seniors, were going through that process, I shared with them, I said, okay, here's my kind of personal statement, and look at how many drafts, look at how I had to change this. And I think it helps humanize a lot of that process.
And you know what? It's also, you're setting an example and showing the students that, the perfect thing doesn't ever happen, right? It takes time. It takes revision. Here, I'm a teacher and I have my bachelor's degree, but, I'm doing this, and it's, a challenge for me stepping out after all these years and doing this. And that they see you going through that, I think is fantastic too. I mean, I hope that they're appreciative of you sharing that with them.
Oh, they love catching, I'm an English teacher, so if they can catch a grammatical error, or Ms. Jones, you missed a word here. I'm like, oh, well, I haven't hit the revision process, guys. So thank you for that.
Let's talk a little bit more about your going back to school. And so, as you said, now you're a student again. And what has that experience been like for you?
It has been amazing in terms of just like, I think the knowledge building and the community building. I have to say, I think I'm really lucky in my particular area of study for the Chicana Studies program. The students that I'm obviously experiencing this with, we have built a really tight-knit community, and that's been great because we've had study sessions, through Zoom, and we meet on campus, and it's been an interesting process to kind of go back and relive some of that, but in a really different way. I mean, when I was an undergrad, I was in a different phase of my life. And so I think going back at this place where I'm at as an adult, I'm 19 years into my career, married, all these different things, I think gives me a very different lens and approach than I would have probably taken as a younger, in my early 20s.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I mean, you are a completely different person,
Yeah.
than you were I'm not saying you're completely different person, but there's a lot of things that are completely different about who you are today because of those experiences that you've been through. And you're right. It does change that lens, the perspective that you have on the whole process and the learning and the interaction with other people, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think I could have, if I wanted to. I think I was a pretty studious person, like undergrad, like I got my attention like in everything. But I think just having the career experience and the life experience, I come in, I think, reading things differently. Like I've had more time to just be in different situations. I give a lot of credit to younger students who are going straight from undergrad into graduate. It's amazing. But I think there's something to be said about having that lived experience. It really just kind of alters your approach, what you see and how you see it.
Yeah. Well, let's jump to a little bit of a different subject. And that's, who would you say sort of inspired you to continue going for your advanced degree? And before that, who sort of inspired you to begin just even with your undergraduate degree?
I know it may seem cliche, but my mom. I know a lot of people probably say, mom, and it's true. I think for me, my mom has always been this amazing rock. She definitely held our house together. I was lucky. My parents were married, but it was contentious. They had their struggles, and it was really hard for her to decide to end that relationship and go through with a divorce, later. But just seeing her hold everything together and make such an effort to provide for me so that I could flourish and develop was huge. So she was actually able to do a little bit of college. She took a few courses at the community college and then left in order to, work full time. And I think she always then pushed me, that, you'll have time to work, but be educated. That was key. And so my family has always seen education, I think, as the key to success, right? Like that's the way that you access so many different things in this world. Even though through my generations of family have had to do physical labor, with very little education, they always really prompted us like, this is essential. You got to do this. So that really drove me.
Yeah. I think that we often are trying to, I don't want to say, fulfill something maybe that our parents didn't, get to complete. But I think there maybe is a little bit in the back of our mind, something like that, that you want to make them proud, you want to show like that their efforts, that what they did meant something, and you want to, just carry on and go as far as you can, just kind of as a thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's especially true and I am a first generation college student. So I think that's especially true for individuals like that, where there is a lot of weight, I think, carried with that, right? That you're the one who's going to do it for so many of your family or your community that couldn't do it. Not that they didn't have the skill or the ability or the mental capacity. It may have been it was an access issue. It was an opportunity issue. You carry that with you. So there's a lot of desire, I think, to want to fulfill not only your own personal goals, but everybody's goals. So, I get that. Well, let's talk a little bit about what it's been like balancing the professional, like being a teacher full-time, yourself being a student now, being married and having a life. What has it been like to balance all those things together? I drink a little bit more now. I didn't used to. Just kidding. Actually I'm not by any means an expert. And I actually tell, my students this because they always say like, oh, I want to stop procrastinating. And I'm like, you guys, I'm much older than you. And let me tell you, it happens. I still procrastinate. It's a thing, but I've had to get a lot better about designating or carving out times of the day where certain things happen. Like I will work out. I will take time for myself, my mental, my physical health. That's important. So yes, I am going to take this workout class, but that means I have to get this reading done. And so how am I going to chunk that out? Right. And I have to kind of plan, like, I have to read for these many pages, right? Or I have to set aside this much time. It's meant coordinating with my husband a lot and just communicating, when things are getting done, when they need to get done, and how do we work together to accomplish everything. Working with colleagues, my grad buddies, relying on other people, which is hard for me. I don't like asking for help, but sometimes it means asking people like, hey, can we meet together and read, and on Zoom. So we're staying awake together. It's that. I think it's a lot of like scheduling, designating and carving out the things that I feel are important and prioritizing all aspects of my life.
And it sounds a little bit like you also have some accountability partners in your fellow students, in that, having the Zoom reading session where, they're going to be there. I got to be there. So you're accountable to them to get that done. And that's a great tool, right? I think that accountability partners are amazing. And, one of my very first guests, Melissa, is an accountability partner of mine. And, we have been working together since 2020. It was January 2020. And actually December 2019, we talked about it and we said, let's be partners and we'll keep each other accountable. And then, what happened, but we still to this day have our weekly talks and our daily check-ins, and it's just been fantastic. So I think that is a huge tool to stay on track, like you said, and then carving out that time. You're absolutely right. It's like, this is important to me. I've got these deadlines and I'm going to section off my calendar in such a way that I can get these things done. So yeah, right on.
Yeah. And being adaptable. I mean, sometimes I think having or giving yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of acknowledgement that, things change, and being adaptable and flexible, because sometimes it takes me longer to read. Yes, I have a goal, maybe I wasn't able to finish that last 20 pages. Okay. So reevaluate. When is that going to happen? How is it going to happen? And being honest with myself about, sometimes it's like, what, this isn't maybe all going to get done right now. So having to negotiate those things is really important. And I'm really lucky, I have this amazing husband that is, he's so thoughtful. He's so sweet. I mean, this is the kind of guy who I'm up at midnight working on a paper and he'll bring in a cup of tea. I'm very lucky. And I think that your support system and who you have around you is so, so important.
Yeah, that's excellent. And you were talking about communication with your partner, and that plays a huge role, not just in something that's as big as this, but even just on a daily basis, right? Having communication with our partners is key to a good relationship. A successful, long-lasting relationship, you've got to have that communication. So that's awesome. And so thoughtful that he's bringing you tea when you're late studying. That's amazing. I love it.
The best.
So would you say that your journey has been pretty linear? Like you set out straight away to become a teacher, you became a teacher, you're continuing your education to continue teaching. And like, what do you hope to accomplish with that once you have your master's degree?
I think, part of why I wanted to do this is obviously to help my students now, right? That was the immediate, like, I can put this to work. I can put it to use. And that's always important to me, that what I do can be used to help others. Like, there has to be something, I think, immediate to that, to be meaningful to me. However, I think I was also feeling a little stuck. I've been doing this for so long, and I started to, I think, wonder in my mind, what else could I do? If, what else would be out there for me? And I think I had a moment, a little bit of a panic moment where I was like, I don't know what else I would do. And, then you start to face some of those fears. So part of this was, I think, exposing myself to like, what comes after, like, even if I can pursue this career until the end and retire as a teacher, but then what? Life doesn't stop when you retire. There's a lot of life left to live. So what could I do? And so I think this has been, it's been linear so far, but I think I was hitting a wall and I needed to push through that wall. That's been part of the process. So I don't know yet, I'd love to maybe design curriculum or help future teachers, maybe to support them. I have a deep love for education and helping students. So I'm hoping to still be tied to that.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love it. Well, let's wrap up our conversation right now and talk a little bit about maybe some books that you've read or are reading, or if there's any podcasts that you're listening to that you could recommend that you think would be beneficial for the listeners that, have been influential or beneficial to you in your life.
So before I started graduate school, the last fun read that I had, there were several, but one particularly that stood out to me is called What Would Frida Do? And it's based off of Frida Kahlo, the artist, muralist. And so it was really interesting the way that the writer talked about Frida Kahlo and her life, her career, but the way she structured it was kind of also like these lessons that we today can learn from this woman who lived, at a very different time in history, but how can we embed some of her passion and her resilience into what we do today? And so using that as a model, which I thought was so amazing. So that was really cool. Gosh, I've read so many now because of grad school. It's a little bit of a blur.
So is there any podcast that you would like to suggest that we take a look at?
I'm a fan of The Daily from the New York Times. I just feel like that's such a great, easy way for me to kind of stay informed around national, global issues, very current events. There is another one, I think it's Latino USA. Common Ground is another one that I've enjoyed. So yeah, those are just a few.
Great recommendations for sure. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm super interested in the book now. I'll of course include everything in the show notes for everyone who's listening. I mean, you've just made it sound so interesting that you've piqued my curiosity. And I want to add that to my list and check it out. You're right. The time period that she lived was completely different. And so, how can we translate some of that, how she lived and, can we implement any of those ideas or even just to open your mind to new concepts, right? I think is just fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing those. And
You're
thank
welcome.
you for coming on the show, Annette. It's been such a pleasure. I've enjoyed hearing about your journey and learning about, what it is that you hope to do and carry forward, with your education and sharing that with your students. I think it's fantastic. I know that they've got to love you because you're such a sweetheart. And so maybe you're a tough teacher. I don't know. Are you a tough teacher in the classroom? Because I
like to tell my students, I'm like, you can hate me now, but you'll thank me later. So that's all that matters.
Yes.
So again, I think it's that loving accountability. I'm going to be the push. I'm going to be the pain, but I'm hoping it pays off in the end. So
yeah,
it's probably depending on who you talk to.
But you know what? I'm just going to say that teachers are so amazing. You're influencing these children to a level that, and I'm sure you had teachers who were favorites of yours as well, who had an impact on you and who you became. But really, there's nothing like a teacher for children. So you are just fantastic. We don't deserve you guys. You guys are amazing. Like, we should be paying you millions and millions of dollars. And I know I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. The influence that you have and what you're doing in broadening children's horizons, they're opening their minds, and it's just priceless. It's absolutely priceless. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for coming on my show and sharing with us.
Yeah, no, thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you for having me. And I really appreciate what you're doing. I mean, just, being able to, I think, share stories is important. I think it's a human experience, but it's recognizing, we have a long rooted history in oral tradition. And so when stories are not told, it's also us not recognizing each other. So it is really important. So this is really great that you're willing to share, and we can come on and share what we have, and it's all to build, I think, that knowledge. So
I love it. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you again, Annette, and you have a great evening. I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you.